Hey guys, welcome back to the Magfed Ranch Paintball channel, and today I'm going to be shooting another headshot hump days. But before I get into it guys, as always, please subscribe to the channel, right? Smash that like button, and of course turn on your notification bell so that way you're notified when we post new content, which by the way, of course, is every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And of course, I'm posting my other videos from our library on the other days, guys. But hey, check out our library, guys, at Magfed Ranch Paintball on YouTube. That being said, of course, please watch this whole video and then, of course, share and comment. I love all the comments, guys. Love you guys asking questions or obviously commenting, and then I love answering them, or of course just reacting to your guys' comments as well. Appreciate them all. So appreciate the engagement. All right, guys, so today's headshot hump days topic is kind of a continuation of something that I've been, I guess, discussing, debating, but I think it's all great conversation, guys. I think these are the conversations that we need to have in the Magfed paintball community, because I think with this conversation, hopefully it can lead to obviously some application, some execution, and of course, maybe we can get some of this stuff to happen. And that specific topic, guys, is the gameplay topic, right? Like, what should our set of rules be? What should obviously our loadouts should be? What equipment we can use, uniforms, all those type of stuff to get maybe, hopefully, what we would all agree upon is a standardized Magfed gameplay, right? Similar to, stock class or speedball. Something that we can all kind of build, agree upon, and of course showcase to the world and everyone that might be interested in playing Magfed what the gameplay of Magfed is in terms of a general consensus. Okay, so that being said, guys, today's topic I want to talk about is field dimensions, right? Because headshot hump days is all about obviously first strikes, snipering, designated marksman, or obviously accurate shots, right? Kind of getting the best performance out of first strike with our Magfed markers. And so if we're going to, I guess, agree upon or dictate a field size for this gameplay, what should those dimensions be? Now, we know in speedball, right, the dimensions stereotypically is 100 by 150 feet, right? So roughly 33 yards by 50 yards. And sometimes you'll get some fields that are 120 feet by 150 feet, right? So 40 yards by 50 yards. And that makes total sense, right? Because the maximum range of a paintball round, shot fairly accurately per se without having to lob it so much, is about 150 feet, right? Assuming that you chronoed it properly, right? I've don't have to say it, but we've all been to an event or a game, right, where someone has hopped up their marker quite a bit, right, and shooting it faster than the 280 or 290 feet per second, and they definitely go flying a lot further than what you would normally see. So I get it, but if it's regulated at the 280, 290 feet per second, as we all should agree upon, then typically with normal round ball, that 50-yard range is kind of the maximum range that is allowable, or I guess producible with the standard marker, right? But obviously with Magfed, and specifically with first strike rounds, that distance is double. Let's be honest, right? We can effectively engage targets. And when I mean effectively, right, like with the normal round ball marker, you can effectively engage targets at 150 feet, right, 50 yards, without kind of like, I guess, just, with a fair amount of accuracy, I guess, for lack of better words, right? It would be considered like area target accuracy. It's not point target accuracy, right, where you're aiming individually at a man-sized target. You're kind of shooting around that area, and you should be able to hit that area with a relative accuracy at 50 yards with round ball. But with first strike rounds in a Magfed marker, that distance more than doubles typically, right? So at 100 yards, right? So let's say we just give it twice the distance, 100 yards versus 50 yards, right? You can effectively hit a man-sized target with a dialed-in, accurized Magfed marker using match grade, right? Dialed-in first strike rounds on a man-sized target at 100 yards, right? And so when we're talking a man-sized target, we're talking about approximately an 18-inch width, right? The average width of a man is typically anywhere between 16 to 18 inches. And of course, you know, the height of an average person, man specifically, is about 5'10". And so you should be able to hit a man-sized target at 100 yards with an accurized first strike Magfed marker. So that's a lot more accurate than round ball would be at 50 yards. And probably, you know, I would love to test this, you know, one of these days, but I would theorize that an area target capability of a Magfed marker with first strike rounds is probably closer to 130, maybe even to 150 yards, right? Meaning that you should be able to relatively hit an area at 130 to 150 yards if you're aiming for that area, okay? But let's just, like I said, 100 yards, we know for sure in our testing and on there's info out there that you can hit a man-sized target at 100 yards pretty accurately. So that being said, then what should be the dimensions of our Magfed gameplay field? You know, is 100 yards that length, right? Should it be, let's say, maybe it's going to be, obviously, it should be bigger than your standard speedball field, but is that 60 yards by 100 yards, right? So is that 180 feet by 300 feet? I would love to see that dimension, but let's be honest, right? That's a lot of space to dedicate to a Magfed field. So let's talk about the pros and the cons real quick, right? If we use that dimension, and let's talk about the cons real quick, right? The con is obviously a field would have to dedicate more room for that field, right? For that gameplay, versus they could set up an equivalent, you know, 2 speedball fields in that same distance. So, you know, you would need more room if you wanted to set up multiple Magfed fields. You know, if you wanted to host, for example, a Magfed event, right? So if we wanted to go, like I said, 60 yards by 100 yards, just pretty much for every 4 speedball fields, you're literally only getting 2 Magfed fields, okay? The other problem too, and I think this is the huge one, besides just the lack of room, is the engagement, the speed of gameplay. I think the problem is if we go with too large of a field, what you might get, and don't get me wrong, I'm gonna keep going here, you might get where people might just camp out too much and use the first strike's capability to kind of engage targets. And so you won't get this fast-paced, you know, action-paced gameplay. And so it might be kind of, unfortunately, boring to watch, right? It's kind of a slower game. Even though people might be impressed with the accuracy, right? You can see these, you know, rounds going all the way to 100 yards and really, you know, getting close to the target or even maybe hitting the target. It's, you know, the lack of action and more movement doesn't really lead to a viewership and entertaining type of gameplay. And I think that will be the big one. As much as I would love the bigger dimensions to showcase the FSR's capability, I think that would be the huge detriment to that size of field, okay? And then of course, you know, there's logistics involved, there's infrastructure things involved, right? If you have a bigger field, you would need to obviously build more bunkers, more, you know, obstacles, whatever, right? Whatever layout of the field, let's say if you're making like house structures, car structures, a bus, a helicopter, like all these cool things I can think about that would like simulate a real, versus the whole balloon, right? That's the thing too. I mean, I would prefer not running like a balloon, kind of pop-up balloon speedball style of layout, but actual structures. And if you have a bigger field, it would require building more of those structures, which is going to add to the cost, obviously, right? The setup time. So you would literally need to have dedicated fields pre-built for Magfed versus, whereas a speedball event, you can literally like pop it up. It's literally just like for lack of better words, almost kind of like a kid's playhouse, right? You go to a birthday party, they can just pop up the freaking balloon structures and take it down, and bam, they can move on to wherever they need to go. So I think that's going to be a huge part of this equation as well too. So, and then of course, well, let's talk about the pros real quick. One of the obvious pros is obviously, like I said, just showcasing and allowing the players to see and have fun and have the experience of what the first strike rounds are capable of, right? 60 yards, 100 yards, you can, and effectively quote unquote DM or snipe targets all the way out to those distances, and you can, enjoy that gameplay, okay? But besides that, like I said, I don't really see the pros if we're trying to standardize a gameplay beyond that fact, okay? So if 60 yards and 100 yards is way too big, then what should the dimensions be? I personally think these are the two dimensions that we should talk about and maybe come to agreements. I think the width should be no more than 50 yards, right? So that's 150 feet. And I believe the length should be no more than 80 yards or 240 feet. And I propose that we might even do like a 70-yard length, right? So, or like I said, maybe a smaller field of like 40 yards by 70 yards or 50 yards by 80 yards, right? Or some combination of those distances. And the reason for that, I think, is exactly the reasons why I said that the bigger fields won't work. One, it'll allow engagement, right? You're kind of forced to engage your opponents more frequently because now you're in range. I mean, everyone is in range. At 70 yards, 80 yards, first strike rounds are capable of 5 to 10 inch groupings depending on your marker setup and your FSR setups. And so, that's very accurate at those distances. And then of course at the width of like 50 or 40 yards, we're talking, 2 or 4 inch groups. So it's pretty much real life firearms simulation at those distances. And so it's going to pretty much facilitate a fast-paced gameplay. Oh, real quick, another one of the things that we could obviously implement in our rules and our gameplay to facilitate that action pace is, of course, a time limit. Of course, we should set a time limit on our gameplay. Maybe that's 10 minutes, maybe it's 15 minutes. It should be fairly quick, right? It should be a fairly talk about objectives real quick, right? Like what's the objective of the gameplay? It should be a fairly simple objective, like maybe it's just straight elimination, capture the flag, or of course, just hit a button so that way it signals the end of the match. And then points or scores are based upon eliminations and based upon obviously whoever gets the flag or whoever taps the buzzer, but something like that, right? And then real quick side note, because it's Magfed, because of the accuracy, because of there's potential sniper / DM positions, maybe we can get extra points for some cool objectives like sniper shots or DM shots or who had the best headshot. Who knows? There's so many things that we can add into there later that could add to the scoring system or to the highlights or to the fun, the fun aspect of the Magfed gameplay, okay? But going back to dimensions, like I said, I think 40 to 50 yards width and then 70 to 80 yards length should be probably the dimensions that we should agree upon because feet-wise, that's about 120 to 150 feet width, and then 210 to 240 feet length. And I think that's a good compromise in terms of space that a field would need to, to dedicate to a Magfed field. And then also just kind of like I said, allowing the gameplay to develop and dictate a fairly fast, action-paced gameplay. Because that's the other thing, guys, if we want people to play this sport, we need it to be fairly fun and engaging, right? You don't want to be just like sitting out there and just kind of like hiking around, right? We need to see some action. Otherwise, one, people are going to like not really enjoy it. They're going to say this is too slow. And then of course, from a viewership standpoint, right? If we're talking long term and we want like maybe people to watch the gameplay, because let's be honest, like a lot of people that might not want to play at first, they just want to observe and see what the gameplay is about. If they see that it's really kind of slow and, for a better word, boring, they might not want to try it out because they'll be like, man, this pace is too slow. This takes too much time. I'd rather, do something that's more fun. So I think having a smaller field, setting time limits, and then of course, I think the other thing too is, yes, have some good obstacles, bunkers, structures for the gameplay, but don't make it so, I guess, so covering that it would allow like, someone to camp out, right? So yeah, maybe make some cool structures like, some tires, some drum barrels, right? Like those type of things, maybe a car with open windows, open doors, so that way, yes, you could hide behind these structures, but there's still ample line of sights for you to get eliminated, right? So even though you might hide behind these structures, there's not much coverage, and especially with the accuracy of the markers, it's not that easy, not that clear, right? The other thing I would try to obviously facilitate is more of a team style of gameplay, which I think by default, playing Magfed, if you want to be effective, you're gonna have to use that tactics anyways. But whatever we can do to lay out the field, maybe lay out the objective to facilitate more gameplay, teamwork, I think that would be really cool to see. And then of course too, facilitate reloads as well too, right? Like obviously the loadout of a Magfed marker setup, we shouldn't probably, it should be a limited ammo type of gameplay. So we want to definitely kind of highlight the reload aspect, right? Someone having to reload during a firefight engagement, that would really be cool in terms of not just as a viewer watching that, to see who could do a really good reload, but also just kind of the player themselves having to experience that, right? I know a lot of us that's played Magfed, I mean, I'll raise my hand, but anybody out there who's had to be in an engagement and then having to, either do a quick reload or duck behind cover and do a reload and re-engage, that experience is just super cool, right? It's like super realistic, and it's just the adrenaline rush, super fun. So anything like that we can add to the realism of the sport, and then kind of just an added experience to the gameplay, I think would be really cool. That's pretty much it, guys. I just wanted to talk about dimensions. Obviously I can make other videos if you guys want. Please comment, like I said, if you guys have any questions. But we should probably start discussing some of these things as a community moving forward, and then seeing what we can do about it. I think that will be a good step in the right direction to help promote and progress, right, Magfed, right? Keep it progressing and keep it getting to the point where I really believe that this sport can be and then take off. Okay, guys, but yeah, give me your thoughts. Let me know what you think. Appreciate all your guys' comments and questions, and love you guys as always. Talk to you guys next time. Peace.